read one article was saying, well, this might be just sort of neurotransmission, that maybe what's happening in the brain during reading is something called excitotoxicity. 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 Yeah, sounds exciting, maybe toxic. What is it?
Well, excitotoxicity, and this is tricky stuff, and it's controversial.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that actually makes rabies researchers at conferences get into fights with each other. Here's the basic idea. You might think that brain infection just physically destroys the brain. This theory, the brain isn't physically destroyed, it's just that the neurons themselves are overexcited, and the brain's disrupted, and it's going to shut down. Them are just overwhelmed. In other words, it doesn't destroy the brain, it disrupts the brain.
The brain itself is bigger.
So it's like a software problem, not a hardware problem. Yeah, and what Rodney read is that people had died of rabies, and in the autopsy, their brains looked totally fine.
Entirely normal.
Moreover,
the virus was gone.
You couldn't even detect the rabies virus in their brain.
The brain no longer had rabies in it.
Really? Yeah, it was like there was no weapon at the scene of the crime.
So that was my clue.
What that suggested to Rodney is that the immune system does eventually turn on.
Right.
And it kicks in, and it starts fighting the disease, but it just gets there too late.
So the immune system had all the tools, but essentially this virus beats your immune system to the punch. It would kill you faster than the immune response could eradicate it.
Because the virus moves, more quickly than the immune system?
Way faster.
And to me, it was like, well, you know, the solution there is obvious.
If you could buy Gina's immune system some time,
enough time, you could clear the brain, and the brain would not be damaged.
She might survive. So what he suggests to Anne is that he put Gina into a coma.
Put her into a coma.
Induce a coma, and if an anesthesiologist is controlling routine brainstem activities like
breathing, circulation,
then
no matter what the virus is actually doing inside her brain, he might be able to keep her alive.
Long enough for the immune system to make a response, which would take normally about 7 to 10 days.
And this is still kind of a guess.
This is entirely improvised, yeah. And lots of things can go wrong, and when they go wrong, they typically go wrong badly.
He knows there's a huge risk that she's going to end up being brain dead, or maybe locked in.
And that's worse than death, I think, in everybody's eyes.
Were you nervous about the possibility? He said she could end up being a vegetable, just like she.
I don't think I thought that far ahead. I thought more of, let's just keep her alive, get the disease out of her.
So they put Gina into a coma. Rodney figures we'll give her a week, and then we'll check to see if she has an immune response.
And once they had her hooked up with the coma, she had the pole with all the IV stuff on and the different medications and stuff.
Anne stays with Gina in the hospital room and spends her time
praying and calling people and asking them to pray. And
she repeated this one prayer,
Psalm 91,
over and over again.
It talks about, you know, basically the devil not getting a hold of you.
He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence.
And so we were just waiting.
Cover you with his feathers.
Waiting.
And under his wings you will find refuge.
It was probably the most uncomfortable feeling I've ever had in medicine.
7 days in, they sample her spinal fluid, send it in for testing, and then they get the results, which say
her antibody response is in and going up.
So her immune system is working.
Yeah, it was working, and in fact, we now had rabies antibody, and we had a fair amount of it, and it was in the spinal fluid, meaning it's around the brain. And so essentially the plan worked. So we said, well, okay, let's start waking her up.
But as they're waking her up, she has a fever.
And they couldn't figure out what was causing the fever.
So they put her back under for another week. And then finally, they start to wake her up again.
And she gradually woke up?
Reacted enough great, and she had nice pupils, but physically, she did not move a muscle. Your hands hurt, the palm hurt. She had no movement anywhere other than her pupils.
So she responded to light?
Light, that's it.
And this was the one thing that Rodney was most afraid of.
Gina was locked in. Especially on the sides, locks in the bottom. And it was the worst day of my life. Because it looked like she'd probably survived, and we'd actually done worse than death.
And as Rodney drove back and forth from work, he kept repeating this one prayer.
Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a poor sinner. Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a poor sinner. Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a poor sinner. And then about 2 days later,
Rodney's in the hospital. He's looking over Gina's charts.
just checking her exam, and
Another doctor is finishing up her shift, and she comes over to Rodney.
said, "Oh, did you know that she had reflexes today?" I said, "No."
Rodney grabs a reflex hammer.
And then sure enough, she had knee reflexes.
Next day,
Her eyes started fluttering a little bit.
within a week,
She was back.
For a couple weeks after I woke up, I still have no memory.
this is Gina Giese, the first person to survive rabies without the vaccine.
My first memory was actually Thanksgiving Day
A couple of weeks after she woke up from the coma.
back in 2004. I just remember being with my family and playing board games with my brothers and just them being there, and then going down to the cafeteria for dinner, having fish. I remember we had fish.
How long was she in the hospital for? About 2 months.
I had to learn how to stand and then to walk, to turn around, to move my toes. I was really, after rabies, a newborn baby who couldn't do anything, and then I had to relearn that all.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that feeling?
Yeah, mentally I was there, mentally I knew how to do stuff, but my body wouldn't cooperate with what I wanted it to do, and it was frustrating. And it definitely took a toll on me psychologically. I'm still recovering. I'm not completely back.
She can't play volleyball anymore, but she finished high school, went to college,
I graduated with a degree in just general biology.
and now Gina is really into bats.
She's a bat lover.
Yeah.
If I ever go down to the zoo, they let me go behind and in with the bats, and I can pet them and stuff.
Really?
Yeah, I'll feed them, I'll pet them. I've been going to bat festivals here in Wisconsin, so I have no fear of bats.
That would be the last person I would expect to go to a bat festival.
Oh, this girl is a saint, that's all.
She is the poster child for what became known as the Milwaukee Protocol.
That's the name of Rodney's thing that he did with her.
Yeah.
You mean that this has been tried again?
This has been tried all around the world by different people and different versions of it, but it's been tried around 30 times.
With what result?
So everything I'm about to say forward, there's debate about every single little bit of it. But he says 5 survivors.
5 survivors?
Yeah.
Out of how many people?
Out of about 30 people. Which on the one hand that seems like a terrible, percentage for a treatment for a disease, 5 out of 30. But on the other hand, this is rabies. And, for all of human history, it was 0 out of 30.
Was there anything about the 5 that separates them from the others?
Well, this brings us to the really murky territory.
Rabies has been one of those just really interesting pathogens to me. The more you think you know about it, the more you don't know about it.
This is Amy.
Dr. Amy Gilbert. I'm a research biologist at the National Wildlife Research Center here in Fort Collins.
So this gets to your question, Robert. A couple years ago, Amy actually went to study rabies in Peru with this guy.
Sergio Repuenco, a physician by profession.
Just so happens Sergio is also from Peru,
I was born in Lima,
and he now works as an epidemiologist at the CDC.
so going to...
But in 2010, they traveled deep into the Amazon jungle.
First from Lima, we have to travel to Tarapoto, and from Tarapoto,
I mean, we're talking
3
remote.
hours from Yurimaguas to San Lorenzo on the...
What were they looking for?
Well, they were studying bat-borne diseases, and in that part of the world, people have a lot of contact with vampire bats.
So we choose 2 towns.
Churinacocha and Santa Marta.
So they arrive and go door to door.
Household to household.
We visit each house and talk with one member of the family.
And they'd ask, have you been bit by a vampire bat? Have you had any illnesses? Then they take a blood sample. And what they found is basically rabies front page news.
11% of the blood samples that were tested
7 people out of 63,
had what we call evidence of virus neutralizing antibodies.
they had rabies antibodies in their blood.
Okay. What's
Well, you know how I mentioned that sometimes the body will mount a response to rabies, but it's just too late?
Yeah.
So you might see those antibodies, but only when somebody's dying, right?
Yeah.
And these people in Peru, they had the antibodies.
But we didn't have any evidence there was any neurological disease in any of the cases.
They didn't seem to have rabies.
I was really very surprised.
I'm sorry, why?
Well, think about it. The only way they could have gotten those antibodies in their blood was
By contact in some point with the virus.
they'd come into contact with rabies, and yet they were fine. It was almost as if they were immune to rabies.
Well,
But Amy won't use that word, immune, because
the data are sort of inconclusive as to whether there was any entry into the brain.
like they didn't know if the virus made it all the way into these people's brains. And so did they come down with full-blown rabies or not? They don't know. But it's possible that these people are special. Some people even argue
That there are special individuals who are able to survive rabies.
and not just in Peru. Monica told me about another case.
The Texas wild child, the rabies case, laboratory confirmed, in a girl in Texas,
17-year-old girl.
a runaway.
She shows up in 2009 at a hospital in Houston. She has a headache, her neck hurts, and she's really agitated. They confirmed that it was rabies, but she,
Didn't receive the Milwaukee protocol or any critical care measures.
as far as we know, they just figured she would die. But then 3 weeks later, this girl,
Went on, to walk out of the hospital.
she just got better
No drugs, no coma, nothing?
on her own.
Wow.
And this actually brings us back to Gina,
Pretty close to normal.
because at the point when she arrived at the hospital to see Rodney,
He actually was diagnosed as having small amounts of antibody in her.
she already had antibody in her blood, like those people in Peru,
She did not have recoverable virus.
We could not isolate virus from her.
which is unusual.
It does seem that she is immunologically special.
In fact, if you look at all of the people who have gotten the Milwaukee protocol and survived, they all have that profile.
Like the girl in Texas, like Precious Reynolds.
That's another girl who got the Milwaukee protocol and survived.
They have had similar lab work come back. Those patients, have extraordinary lab work and extraordinary outcomes.
And so some researchers in Canada and Thailand have argued that Rodney's protocol actually had very little, if nothing, to do with Gina Giese surviving. They would say she survived.
Despite Dr. Willoughby's treatment rather than because of Dr. Willoughby's treatment.
They say that the Milwaukee protocol should be discontinued and that we shouldn't be wasting time and money on it.
They in Bangkok are acutely aware of the fact that to do one Milwaukee protocol case, you could vaccinate, I think it was all of the kids in Bangkok preventatively against rabies.
Tens of thousands of slum kids in Bangkok could be preventatively vaccinated against rabies.
So these critics would say, give people the vaccines, but don't induce a coma and don't use these untested drugs that Rodney administers. And if somebody comes in with an advanced case of rabies, well, unless you have evidence that they're one of these immunologically special people, you just need to accept the fact that they're going to die.
I think, no, calling not to do anything, I will definitely disagree. We'll have to do something.
According to Sergio, the idea that Rodney somehow just got incredibly lucky when he was treating Gina Giese,
That's very unlikely.
Gina was basically at death's door.
There are some things might not be fully understood in Gina G's case, but it was obvious that if she was not given this alternative, she might not have survived.
And you could argue that if Gina's part of this immunologically special group of people who can just survive rabies